Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, a place to find connection and a sense of belonging, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we talk about sensitivity and the richness that it adds, the strengths we have because of our sensitivity, and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, welcome to bonus episode 61. This is a really special episode. Today, October 29th, 2019, is the 1-year anniversary since I launched the podcast Unapologetically Sensitive. And today's episode is called 10 Ways We Can Thrive as a Highly Sensitive Person. And it's really a reflection of what I've learned this last year being in podcasting. So let me tell you what the 10 things are, and then I'm going to go in to talk about them individually. So the first one is embracing imperfection, being of service, naming things, showing up when it's hard in a way that honors our needs, asking for help and support, feeling fear and being brave and courageous anyways, expressing ourselves authentically, connecting, accepting challenges, and living a fuller life. This has been an amazing year of podcasting. And so what I'm going to do is just try and go through each of those and give you some information. But I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. Your support this year has been amazing. There's no way that I would have known a year ago how much I would have grown and changed this last year, how many lives I would have touched, how many of you would have reached out to me and connected with me. I don't even have words to say. So let me start with the first one, embracing imperfection. I have to tell you that I'll go back and listen to an episode, and I was just listening to episode 6 because I want to re-release it for the holidays. And when I was reading the guest bio, I stumbled 3 times, and I guess when I was editing, I didn't catch it and take it out. And I just have to accept that that's where it is. And I have to tell you that if you hear me sound like I'm smiling when I say something sometimes, often it's because it's the 3rd or 4th time that I've tried to put something out and I just can't do it. I've given my email address when I mean to give my website. I've used the wrong word when I've talked about being a guest on a podcast, and I'll say I was the guest instead of the host said. I mean, my brain knows what it wants to say, but my mouth doesn't always cooperate. The audio has been imperfect. I mean, there's just a lot of imperfection. When I hear it, I just have to really be okay with it. I've misnamed, Dr. Elaine Aron talks about the DOES, the 4 core characteristics of being a highly sensitive person. I've misnamed them. What I have to know is done is better than perfect. And now a year later, I've put out over 100 episodes. You guys have gotten some good content. Has it been perfect? No. Has the audio been perfect? No. And if I would have waited until everything was perfect, or if I would have pulled things back because things were not perfect, my message wouldn't have gotten out to the world. And so often people don't have the expectations that we have around things being perfect. Done is better than perfect. The second way we can thrive as a highly sensitive person is being of service. What that's looked like for me is doing Facebook Lives. I love the closed Facebook group that we have called Unapologetically Sensitive. Often people will post a question in there, and it's just easier to hop on and do a Facebook Live. You, the listener, have sent questions to me, so I've created episodes around the questions that you have. There are so many ways that we can show up and be of service, and my experiences as highly sensitive people, we really like connecting with other people. If you're a first-time listener to the podcast, if you haven't heard the term highly sensitive person, you might want to go back to episode 44 with Jacqueline Strickland, where she does a beautiful job talking about what it means to be a highly sensitive person. There's a self-test at Dr. Elaine Aron's website at hsperson.com. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'm happy to give you more information, but I just want to be sensitive if you are a first-time listener. The third way we can thrive as a highly sensitive person is naming things. This is probably the most important one of all that I've just found to be so incredibly powerful. And I can't tell you, even when we have stuff that's just running around in our heads, the power of naming it just shifts something. I don't like the word spaciousness, but what my experience has been is that when I can name something, it just creates room. It's like there's some level of acceptance. It allows things to change. And if nothing else, it just creates a place to accept what's going on. And a couple of examples, like I've really been struggling with a number of things. I consider myself to be a pretty assertive person. When I know what I want, I don't have a problem asking for it. And there have been a few areas where it's just been really hard for me recently. And I finally talked to my husband last night. One of them is around the TV, that he tends to like to watch more TV than I do. I'm very particular about what I like to watch. And I have this narrative that I'm asking him to watch a limited amount of things because he likes to watch so many things and I really don't. And often on Wednesday nights, I run a couple of online courses and they finish after 8 in the evening and we usually get in bed at 9. But I really just like to watch something that we record the night before. I wait until we can watch it together since there are a few shows that we like to watch together. But I can't tell you how many times I come out on Wednesday night and he's in the middle of watching a show that he really enjoys. And I feel like I don't have a right to ask him to stop watching it because I want something different. And so I don't say anything. So I often end up going back into my office or doing things that are not satisfying. And it's been a really taxing day. And I just want something that's going to be kind of relaxing that I can escape into. I finally talked about it with him last night and said, I just have had a hard time asking. He's incredibly generous. Anytime I go into the living room, he'll ask if I want to watch something. So this isn't an issue of he's being insensitive. I just feel really bad asking him to change what he's watching because I have this narrative that I'm disrupting him. I'm asking for special needs. I mean, my reluctance in sharing this is I'm all about being an empowered HSP and I talk about asking for what you want. And this is just an area where I get to do a little bit more growing in. So we talked about this yesterday, and of course he was incredibly supportive. And so I just know that I need to ask a little bit more. And another area that's been going on is with this being the 1-year anniversary of the podcast, I really have wanted to do something to celebrate. My goal was to hit a certain number of downloads. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in the end. But when I hit the milestone that I wanted, I realized I really kind of wanted to do something to celebrate, and I'm not really great at it. As you know, this has been a year of shifting relationships. I've met some wonderful people. They just don't happen to be in San Diego. I think I have that fear of what if I have a party and nobody comes? So I ended up not talking about it and feeling kind of hurt and resentful because I wanted a celebration, and a few close people around me said, you really should do something. But I needed some support around it and I just didn't talk about it. I stewed. So again, yesterday I had a talk with my husband. We're coming up with a plan. And this stuff has been rolling around in my head for weeks, and I just been in a place where I couldn't tell if I needed to sit with it, if I needed to talk about it. Once we name something, it just changes how things are, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we're always going to get what we want, but just naming what's going on. I'm having a lot of judgment. I'm feeling a lot of fear. I'm worrying about what's going to be happening. It doesn't even have to be anything big, but the power of naming things is just so incredibly important. Now my gremlins are up. They're telling me that you don't really care about this stuff. Isn't that a blessing? The fourth one is showing up when it's hard in a way that honors our needs. I can't tell you how many times I've had interviews scheduled and I've not wanted to do them. I'm tired. I've had a few interviews where I've talked with the guest ahead of time and I've cried. I had one interview where in the middle, I think the guest asked if I was okay because I just was not as responsive. I shed a couple tears. I'm always very upfront with my guests if I'm going through something or I'm not feeling like I'm as engaged. I've had guests offer to reschedule. I just know that I need to suit up and show up, that it's okay to feel like I don't want to be here and still do what I need to do. I don't feel like I've ever done it in a way that violates what's going on with me. But I think that there is a way that we can show up authentically. We can be vulnerable. We can share what's going on, and we still do what we need to do. This past summer with Jen Perry, we had run a beta group for the HSP courses, and it was a very small group, and I didn't want to run it. I felt incredibly discouraged. And Jen really encouraged me to let's just go ahead and run the group with what we have. It ended up being the best experience in the world. And that push from Jen to just do the course, regardless of how many people showed up, really created a major shift in my perspective, because coming from a place of expecting things to be full and successful and whatever that looks like, then getting discouraged very easily. And I learned so much from this group this summer, and it really helped to propel the new courses that I launched on my own in September. It's so easy for us to get discouraged, to feel like we're not doing it right, to feel like we're just not up for the task. And I often find that if I can just get my body to whatever it is that I need to do, and I show up, somehow the energy seems to show up for me. Now, there are times when it's going to violate our needs. We need to say no. We need to pull back. I certainly have plenty of those times. But for me, the transition of getting from here to there and starting is what I struggle with more than needing to pull back. So this has been a really key point for me. The fifth one is asking for help and support. And I think for those of us that have experienced some childhood emotional neglect, had parents that were emotionally immature, we didn't learn that it's okay to be interdependent. It's okay to ask for help. With this stuff that I've been going through with my husband and things just being off recently, it's been a little bit more challenging for me that I feel like I shouldn't say this, but like, I don't want to have needs. I don't want to need people. I want to be able to do it on my own. And I know that that's coming from a place of woundedness, that needing people, asking for help is really healthy. It's a good thing. And I've just had to kind of acknowledge, again, naming it. I don't want to ask for help. I don't want to need anybody. Okay, so what's going on? What is it that I want to need? I just posted recently asking for ratings and reviews on my Facebook page, and I reached out to all the previous guests on the podcast and asked if they would be willing to rate and review the podcast. For me, I think it adds credibility. If I'm looking for a podcast and it only has a handful of reviews, I'm less likely to pick it as opposed to one that I feel like, oh, a lot of people have taken the time to rate and review, so it must be worthwhile. And when we reach out and ask for support and we get it, it feels really nice and really validating. And I think we have this idea, especially as being sensitive and being told that we're being too much, that it can be really hard for us to honor our needs for support. The sixth one is feeling the fear and doing what we need to do anyway. And what I found out this last year is I am so much braver and more courageous than I thought I was. I am just really surprised. Allowing ourselves to be seen can be incredibly nerve-wracking. I know I've talked to some people who've launched a blog, or they've started a podcast, or they're just coming up with ways that they are allowing themselves to be seen, and it can feel really, really scary. We open ourselves to criticism. We open ourselves up to getting unsolicited feedback or advice. And it also creates room for people to really come in and let us know how they're impacted by what we're doing. And I can tell you that you have been so supportive this last year, and it has been so touching to me when people reach out and tell me how they're being impacted by the podcast and the changes that they're making and the things that they're looking at. I mean, it's been amazing. I have gotten what felt like a critical review, whether it was or not. I don't know. It felt a little critical to me. Gotten some feedback that's not exactly what I would love. And the truth is, we're not going to be everything to everybody. How we show up in the world is not going to resonate with everybody. And so we really get to focus on knowing what our point of view is, know what our values are, know what our message is, and stay really focused on that, and know that the people that are meant to be in our lives are going to be attracted to that, and the people that are not drawn to that are going to fall away from our lives, and it's really okay. And I have to tell you that when I go through times when I'm feeling more vulnerable, my gremlins come up, and I want to be the perfect thing for everybody. I look around at what I feel like success looks like for other people. I compare myself. So it's not that we don't ever have those things, but we learn to recognize like, I'm more vulnerable right now. I'm comparing. I'm in that less than place. There are ways that we can just, again, name what's going on. We don't have to change it, and know that the right people will be drawn towards us, and just stay focused on what our path is. I think It's normal to look around and compare. And when we have a message or some gift to share with the world, whatever it is in whatever capacity, we just need to do what we're good at. The seventh way that we can thrive as a highly sensitive person is expressing ourselves authentically. Through this last year, what I've really learned, I've talked about this, that often as highly sensitive people, we have a way of showing up in the world and we just assume that everybody else shows up the same way. I have to say, I've been really kind of surprised this last year to see how articulate I am and how sensitive I am and engaging, how meticulous I am with words as I've talked with guests, if I've talked with other people, I've been involved with some summits. I really try and absorb a lot of information. I continue to be kind of surprised at how I hear people talk about the trait of high sensitivity, the words of judgment that I use of good or bad, or, I'm just very meticulous with my words. I also don't think that I realized how easy it is for me to break things down into simple, usable steps. I think because I get so overwhelmed and theory just doesn't work well for me. I want to know, what does it look like in a person? And this really kind of comes down to, I don't consider myself a storyteller, but I think that in the examples that I've used throughout this last year, I think I'm a pretty good storyteller. So what are your gifts and what are the ways that you show up that you take for granted, but are really gifts? And think about what people have told you. And we often tend to be really dismissive of those things because we feel like this comes easily to me. It's not really a gift. But when we look around and see that other people don't have the things that come very easily to us, that we can recognize that those really are gifts that we have. The eighth way to thrive is through connection. And whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, when we find even one person that really sees us and hears us, that sense of connection and belonging is so important. What I've learned this last year, especially discovering that I'm an extrovert, is I really love connecting. I've met some amazing guests, the listeners of the podcast, all the people that have reached out to me that I've met either through the Facebook groups or through the meetups that I run or from you emailing me. I'm just kind of astounded at each and every one of you. The members of the closed Facebook group called Unapologetically Sensitive have been amazing. You generate so much support and great questions and comments. It's really been a joy connecting with you. Members from the summer beta group that Jen and I ran, and the current members of the online HSP courses. Oh my gosh, you guys, you people, that's gendered language. I apologize. I'm working on that. The level of sharing and the intimacy and the things that you talk about and the sense of connection for each of the groups, I just feel so honored to be part of your process. The people I've done consults with and have had the pleasure and honor of working with, whether it's therapy or coaching, the meetup groups in San Diego have been really, I love them. And the Facebook community, that there are all kinds of places and ways that we can connect in ways that work for us, whether we're an introvert or an extrovert. The ninth way is accepting challenges. And there are lots of ways that we can all be challenged. And I want to give a shout out to Jennifer Navarrete, who created NADPA-POMO, which is the National Podcast Post Month. And I had no idea that this was something that Jennifer did, but I launched 2018, October 29th, and there's the 1 month podcasting challenge, the 30-day podcasting challenge, where every day for 30 days you release something. I just launched the podcast. I initially thought that I would just do one of the traits from Dr. Elaine Aron's list of for the self-test to see if you're a highly sensitive person. And I did that for a couple of days. And then I just started talking about some stuff. This is how I came up with the idea of doing bonus episodes, talking about whatever I wanted to. And I wouldn't have come up with the bonus episodes had it not been for the 30-day podcasting challenge, because I felt like I'm doing interviews. I didn't feel like I really had enough content that I could do a bonus episode. I didn't think I could talk for more than a few minutes. I didn't think I had anything of value to share. And doing these bonus episodes has been amazing. I think at this point I have 61 bonus episodes and I think 44 weekly interviews. So there are more bonus episodes than there are weekly interviews. And a fun little story is when I went to Podcast Movement, I am in a Facebook group for female podcasters, and I found somebody to share a room with. I hadn't met her, but I did this when I went to Podcast Movement in 2017, and it worked out fine. So we're sharing this room together. We're talking. We've been together for a day or two, and I find out that my roommate, Jennifer Navarrete, is the one who created the 30-day podcasting challenge. And it totally changed how I show up as a podcaster doing the bonus episodes. So it just was a little bit of serendipity that she really influenced my podcasting. I don't know if I can call it a career, but my podcasting experience because of her challenge. So are there other challenges that you can take that are going to push you a little bit and expand you? Because I ended up discovering this whole other part of podcasting that I wouldn't have experienced. The final way that we can thrive as a highly sensitive person is by living a fuller life. Everybody gets to decide what that is and where we want to stretch and grow. For me, this last year, I've traveled more than I ever have, and I'm really starting to appreciate travel. Now, every time before I get ready to leave on a trip, I don't want to go. And I just know that that's what comes up for me. The packing gets overwhelming, the having to plan what I'm going to wear, just that whole thing, being out of my routine. I just know that that comes up and I'm like, okay, I know you don't want to go, but let's just pack and go anyways. And then I have this amazing time. And it was really interesting. This last time I just came back from a trip from San Francisco, I had the opportunity of meeting Karen Drucker, who I interviewed in one of the previous episodes, someone I've admired for forever, invited me to her women's retreat. And so generally on the day that I pack, I kind of need some space. I'm usually pretty anxious, and the way that I manage is to just get really tasky, and my husband kind of knows to give me space. It was really interesting because I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth and he was standing at the bathroom door, and then I was blow drying my hair and he was talking and he was kind of following me around, and that usually really irritates me. And we talked about, I was so much more present this time getting ready and appreciated having him close by, and he helped me out, and he'd, go put some things where I needed them, or he'd go get some things. I usually get irritable. I usually have a meltdown or get snappy. Like, it was just a normal morning together, and we actually were running a little bit late, and I needed to stop and get some cash, and should we stop? Should we not? I thought it'll be fine. Turns out my flight was delayed 20 minutes and it worked out fine. But had this happened earlier, I just would get so kind of nervous and wasn't even able to get in touch with what was going on. And I know it's because I've been working through this, and this was the third trip that I took this summer, and they were all for business or personal growth reasons. And then my husband and I took another trip. I just think that our worlds can expand and we can experience more when we understand about our traits and what we need. And even if there are parts of traveling or doing something that's going to help us live a fuller life that may not be exactly what we want, there's still ways that we can work with our traits and just have a deeper, richer, fuller life, which I think everybody wants if we can do that in a way that honors our highly sensitive traits and needs. So here we are at a year. What I want to let you know is the podcast is heard now in 87 different countries. I mean, that just kind of blows my mind. My goal was to have 50,000 downloads by 10/29. Today is October 25th, and there's over 60,000 downloads, which is just amazing. I've released, with this episode, it will be 105 episodes. I really never would have thought that launching a podcast would create so much personal growth in my life, so many sweet connections with people that I hadn't met, hadn't known. Really hearing your stories, hearing what you struggle with, hearing the successes that you're having in your life, hearing what you want to hear me talk about is just such a gift. And really, without each and every one of you, the listener, there would be no podcast. So my hope is that I'm constantly or consistently letting you know how much I appreciate you, but I really do appreciate each and every one of you and everybody who's given me support. I can't even imagine what the next year is going to bring as far as the podcast and all kinds of stuff. I want to give a very special thank you to my husband, who is often part of my storytelling. I hope that everybody knows that I do it out of love and not to call him out. He grounds me and creates so much stability in my life and love and support and nurturing. So thank you, Steve. My mom, who listens to every single podcast episode and tells me how much she appreciates what I'm doing and is just there and supports me. Laura Carr, who's on vacation right now for 2 weeks, and I'm really missing our daily connection. But your just love and constant support is amazing to me. Jen Perry, Dara Hoffman-Fox, Selma, you've all been so supportive, and I just really appreciate each and every one of you. What I want to leave you with today is, where are you at in your life? Are there areas that are feeling small that you want to expand on? I'm going to go back and read what those 10 areas are again and kind of do a little bit of an evaluation of where are you at in these areas. So embracing imperfection, being of service, naming things, showing up when it's hard in a way that honors our needs, asking for help and support, feeling the fear and being brave and courageous anyways, expressing ourselves authentically, connecting, accepting challenges, and living a fuller life. I don't care where we're at in our lives. There are always areas where we're excelling and other areas where we need to do a little bit more growth, and we do a little bit of growth in one area and we pull back in another area. It's not like we ever get this all nailed and it's perfect. Right now, there are certain areas of my life that I'm really excelling in, and some other areas where they're very out of balance, and I need to put some time and energy to create some more balance. So this is not a tool to beat yourself up with. It's a way to look at your life and see, where are you needing some more balance in your life. If you're interested, the new HSP online courses will be launching again in the end of January. These courses have been so powerful, and to watch the changes and transformations that I'm seeing with everybody in the groups is just, it's just very powerful. And my hope is to bring a little bit more information to you in the next couple months about what people are experiencing, because I can sit and tell you about what I see, but I think unless you hear it for people themselves, it's not going to be as powerful. If you're struggling or wanting to grow and change in any of the areas that we talked about or anything else, I provide online coaching all over the world. I love working with people, help them embrace their traits of being highly sensitive, to really own them, get clear on what it is that works for them. And if they need to make some changes or learn some skills to make things easier in their lives, that's what I love doing. You get to do it from the comfort of your own home. If you have any questions, you can go to unapologeticallysensitive.com. The show notes will be there as well. All the links to my social media are there. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive@gmail.com. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.